afternoon and welcome to Health Talk. My name is Vickie Graham and we have with us Adrienne Helms, who is a crime prevention specialist with Manassas City Police. So good afternoon, Adrienne.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me back.
Have you again. It's good.
Yeah. And since our last show, I wanted to share with your viewers something as a follow-up. Last time we were talking about prescription medication, safety and security, and how you really need to safely dispose of your medications that you're not using anymore, especially narcotics and things like that that are bad to just leave around the home. There is a DEA take-back event that was just announced coming up on Saturday, April 30th, and that will be from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the major hospital centers. So Centera in Woodbridge, and then Novant on Sudley Road in Manassas.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So folks can just take those medications and they'll dispose of them for them?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, they can just roll up. You don't even have to get out of the car. I'll walk up to the car and,
I
and
see.
take that big bag out for you, the shoebox, whatever you have lying around.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so today we're going to be talking about scamming. This is an interesting subject. And so could you give us kind of a rundown of the most typical scams that you might see?
Oh, yeah. So when it comes to scams and fraud, man, I mean, the possibilities are endless because the types that are out there are only limited to a con artist's imagination, right?
Yeah.
And they can get very creative because they want that money. So the most common things I've seen, though, have been mostly phone scams around here. Somebody claiming to be from the government, like an IRS employee, or calling from the Social Security Administration or something like that. Another huge phone solicitation are the people that are claiming to be from the city of Manassas or the county or Dominion Power or something like that, and saying that their utility bill hasn't been paid, and so they're demanding that money, as they speak. They don't want the person to hang up. They want it then. But investment fraud is very big. Charity solicitations, whether they're over the phone or in person or what have you. Door-to-door sales solicitations. Those are a big one to look out for. Even online dating can be a scam.
Yeah. So the ones that with the IRS calling you and Dominion Power and those kinds of places, are those organizations or those entities going to be calling your home and asking for money? That's
the thing. The IRS never calls.
Okay.
They never call on the phone. We all know how long we have to wait when we call them. So they're not likely to call them, just check up and see how your day is going. They're going to notify you by mail if you have an issue. So what I always tell people is, whether it's someone's claiming to be from the IRS or any entity, always hang up the phone and check yourself. So if you are concerned about your health benefits, your tax bill, what have you, call that organization directly.
That's
call
a great
the IRS.
idea.
Yeah. If you think you owe taxes, you might, but call them directly.
Yeah.
Oftentimes somebody will claim to be from a bank, and they'll want the resident to update their profile, like their information and their bank account info. And so again, they need to hang up the phone, and if they think that that's something they need to take care of, they need to call Wells Fargo directly or BB&T or.
Yeah. So the consumer should really be the one that initiates the contact.
Yes,
Okay.
and I always say, if you were not the person who initiated that transaction, no matter what medium it was in, whether it was over the phone, in person, or even by mail, then do not ever give out your personal or financial information. Not even a tiny bit, because con artists can be very tricky. Sometimes they'll have a lot of your information already, and so if they were to call you, they could build rapport and trust with you. And at some point, they'll just need one little tidbit of information to complete their job. Like, they'll need the security code on the back of your debit card. And so after they've already reeled off the 16-digit number, they'll say, okay, I just want to make sure you are who you say you are, to the consumer. And they'll say, to verify, can you give me your birthday, please, and the 3 digits on the back of the card. So it's very easy to get caught up in a conversation like that. and even forget who called whom, you know?
So what they do, it sounds like, is to make you comfortable, and then you're willing
Yes.
to give up some information. So if you hang up, then there's no comfort level, right?
Right.
Then you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, and people really don't need to feel rude about hanging up on somebody. I mean, you're never going to see their mug, you know? I mean, hopefully.
You might.
Yeah.
At the post office.
Yeah, but you know, if they actually feel bad about hanging up, I say tell them that. I mean, first of all, we have to understand that they don't want the consumer to hang up because they know that they're going to go talk to their parents, their son, who's a police officer, somebody, and that person's going to say, nope, that's a scam. And so they want a commitment right then and there. They don't want you to sleep on it. They don't want you to think it over or talk to your attorney, anything like that. So the longer they can keep you on the phone, the better. But I always tell people if they're uncomfortable hanging up, they can always just say, my son wants to talk to you instead. And then they're going to go, no, it's okay. You know, so, I mean, there are a lot of ways you can kind of shimmy out of the conversation. Yeah.
And so charities, you said, sometimes too?
Yeah, the thing with charity solicitations is the same. I mean, it can come in any form, but quite often, I mean, a criminal could use a real organization's name, right? Like the American Cancer Society. But more often than not, and you'll see this on counterfeit websites, they'll come up with a fake name that sounds similar, like National Cancer Society or something that you know makes you go, is that the organization that does A, B, and C? And with those, a very common technique that they use is called forced teaming. And what they're doing, again, is trying to establish that relationship with the consumer and even tug at their heartstrings on an issue. So, and what forced teaming basically is forging a relationship that makes the other party feel guilty if they don't comply with the request. So, so for instance, if I know from just web stalking you a little bit that you love animals, I'll call and say I'm from SPCA or the local pound, wherever, and say, look, you love animals. I'm a dog lover. I've got 15 dogs at home. Like, let's help the dogs together, and ask you for money. Same thing with being a veteran. They're at risk for having somebody calling and saying, look, you're a vet, I'm a vet. Let's help other vets in need, that are out there. So and they'll even exploit victims of natural disasters like Katrina, Sandy, all those storms, and tell a consumer that the money is actually going to help a family. And obviously it's not.
So that's how they get that buy-in.
Yeah. And so when it comes to charity schemes, my advice is always, find an organization that you really trust and you want to donate to, and send it directly to them. So for instance, we all get those calls from the Fraternal Order of Police in the area and stuff like that, and those are actually legit. But you can imagine how common it would be for a con artist to use that as a front, and take money. But if you, just as an example, if you want to support your local fire and rescue departments, then donate it directly to the Fraternal Order on a recurring basis. You can decide at the beginning of the year how much you want to donate in general, and so when you're confronted by a scam artist, it might be easier for you to hang up because you could say, look, I've already budgeted my charities for my charities this year, and you're not on the list. Maybe hit me up next year, and I'll think about it. Another thing I always suggest is donating, like tithing at church or through your faith-based organization, because if you're comfortable with what your church is doing with that money and you believe in its ministries, that's another form of giving. So it's just kind of a catch-all, charity that you can trust most of the time. So.
And one of the other things I heard you say was online dating. Is that correct?
Yeah, online dating can be a bad scheme. So there are so many fake profiles out there, and it's really scary how many people are targeted for a number of crimes online. So you really do have to be guarded about, and keep your information very private, not just your privacy settings, but even if you are connected with somebody online, let's say on Facebook or on a dating site, you've really got to be careful about what you're broadcasting, meaning, telling them personal information about your financial status, your your familial status, did you just go through a divorce or something like that, that would make you seem more vulnerable to a con artist. Because again, they're going to try to forge that relationship big time when it comes to online dating. So, I mean, it's really quite simple. We see a victim come forward and say, I met this guy online or this woman online, thought I was in love, and, he told me he was in trouble. He needed some money for his mortgage payment, and I was in love with him. So I sent him money. Sad thing is, when it gets to that point and they actually care about the person, whether they're real or not, it's hard to convince them otherwise. It's almost like being brainwashed. But again, to really lessen your risk for becoming a target is to protect that information that would make you seem vulnerable.
Yeah. So when we speak of demographics, who do you think is most susceptible to having these scams against them or falling for more?
I would say right now it could happen to anybody. Young people think they're not at risk. They are.
Yeah, and that's a good point, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
We should all be aware.
And more information is even coming out about how to protect your children's identity. Because unfortunately, a social security number can be stolen 2 days after a child's born, and they don't find out until they go to get a student loan or a car loan or something like that when they're 18. So parents really need to stay on top of their kids' credit scores and things, maybe not score, but credit reports and all that. But what we see most of the time is the elderly population being victimized. And those that don't speak perfect English, to be honest. Businesses that are run by, let's say, a Hispanic family might get that utility bill call, and the criminal may assume that they don't understand what's going on, so they'll target them. But yeah, I mean, people think that, the older you get, the richer you are. There's this perception out there that they've got tons of savings, they've got a pension, they own a home, and so they're just this wealth of they just like throw money all the time out the window. When my dad turned 80, he got an interview for a job. That was his birthday. I mean, so we all know that's not real. Not everybody owns a home even. So there's that perception out there. But also, I mean, let's face it. When you get to a certain age, if you're alone, you want company. And so if somebody calls on the phone, they won't have any qualms just sitting and talking, and so they might get wrapped up in a scam that way. Same thing with somebody coming to the door, But I think, and on top of that, a lot of seniors are at home during the day when these door-to-door sales people are going around. So, I mean, that's just one more reason why people have really got to look out for their neighbors. If you see someone out in the neighborhood trying to sell something, stop them and ask, do you have a permit on you? And it's not the resident's job to know exactly what needs to have a permit and what doesn't. I'm not suggesting that, but it's the police's job. So all they have to do is call the non-emergency number and say, look, I see these, kids out selling newspapers or whatever it is, and I don't want somebody in my neighborhood to get scammed. Can you come and make sure they're legitimate? Do
you think the elder population, perhaps it's because they are more trusting? They grew up where, maybe authority, anybody that said something in authority, they sort of were intimidated by that. And then the other part of that is sometimes they're so trusting that they wouldn't imagine that someone would really take advantage of them.
Yes, I think you summed that up very well. Take a landscaping scam, for instance. I've heard of cases where, a young man, just a country good old boy, is going around, and he's local to the area and stuff, and he can relate to the residents in a neighborhood very well, and he offers landscaping services and basically robbed this elderly couple of their entire life savings. And do you think he felt guilty about that? No.
Right.
I mean, that's a problem. So, but as that couple, from that couple's perspective, who would ever think that a young man, some good old boy from, Culpeper or wherever would be capable of something like that. You know, so you've got to trust your gut when it comes to situations like that, and ask other people. Get a second opinion always.
Yeah, I think that's really good to have a support network that you can go to someone, and if you don't have that, then you can call law enforcement, right? What you just said, the non-emergency number, and say, hey, this doesn't sound right, and they'll give you good counsel, I'm guessing.
Yes, yeah, and there are tons of resources out there that actually I'll talk about in a minute. I'll show your viewers. But the other reason I think seniors are often targeted is that they might have a fear of outliving their savings. You know, that's not something someone my age is overly concerned with just yet, but I guess, you know, as I get in age, I'm going to go, maybe I didn't save enough, you know? So that makes them vulnerable for, you know, the investment frauds and the get-rich-quick schemes and things like that. So when it comes to the foreign sweepstakes or lotteries, they're a huge, huge target. You know, I personally know folks that took a long time to really grasp that what they're doing was, you know, what they were participating in was a scam, because they were just so frantic about winning, you know, and they get caught up. So those companies, the scam people, are so smart. I mean, they really can hook you. But the foreign lotteries are actually illegal to play here, and that's something a lot of people don't know. So if you have any questions, I mean, when I'm not getting calls about prescription medication disposal, I'm getting calls about scams.
Scamming,
And a lot of those scams are cyclical. You know, they come and go. So, you know, one that pops up every once in a while is, oh, you know, it says Johnny, your grandson, or, you know, Johnny's friend, you know, he's been locked up down in Puerto Rico, and, you know, we need $5,000 to get him out of jail. When my dad got that call, he said, Johnny, what were you doing down in Puerto Rico? We're like, well, I told you to stay out of trouble, you know. So, I mean, and when you start to talk to them like that, another huge red flag is if they get upset. Because they don't like, the scam artists don't like being asked questions, and they don't like it for you to waste their time, and they get annoyed and they can get very offensive, actually. They can get brutally offensive, and if that happens, you can guarantee that's not somebody from the Fraternal Order of Police or, you know, or SPCA. I mean, that's a scam, that's a con artist.
So if they have like that very strong negative reaction to you, then that's probably a sign that this isn't somebody you want to continue to deal with.
Exactly.
So we're going to share some resources?
So Manassas City Police and other departments as well, we're always out at events, you know, community events, like Fall Jubilee, the Live Well Festival, you know, all the HMI events at the Pavilion and things like that, and throughout the county. And so we always have stuff like this at our tents. So always, you know, I would encourage your viewers to stop by and grab stuff. But we also have them at the station, and these are available online as well. So you can just call either, you know, Prince William County Police or Manassas City Police, and we can even mail this to you. But this is called Taking Charge, What to Do If Your Identity is Stolen. And that is an FTC, a Federal Trade Commission resource. And basically it has steps for not only protecting your medical records, because that's a big problem as well. You know, monitoring your credit, protecting your PIN number. You know, they've got all kinds of tips, but it gets into steps you need to take if your identity is stolen. So, I mean, step by step, they'll say, do this, you know, file your police report, get the affidavit, take it to the Federal Trade Commission. And so Federal Trade Commission is the biggest hub of resources on identity theft and scams. So I encourage people to look at their website too. It's also available in Spanish. All of their materials are. They're incredible. And, you know, we mentioned earlier that children are at risk of identity theft quite often. So they have Safeguarding Your Children's Future, and again, in Spanish. And then this is my favorite. The Federal Trade Commission now has fotonovelas, which are like comic books, basically. They're like telenovelas, but in comic book form in Spanish. And
Very good.
And they basically, their stories depicting a scam or something like that. So it's a great way
Excellent.
we can reach the Hispanic community.
And so if someone wanted to have you come out and speak to their church or their organization, how could they contact you?
Yeah, that's great. They can call Manassas City Police, 703-257-8000. My direct line is 8064, so 703-257-8064. And the county offers the same services. We work very closely together, actually.
sure.
So
Good.
we've actually presented on this together.
Yeah.
So it's a great team over there. 703-792-6500 for the county police.
Very good. So, well, thank you, Adrienne, for being with us today and all the great information. And if someone needs some help with being scammed, Adrienne's the person to help. She knows all the tricks.
Thank you so
thank
much
you.
for having me
Thank
back.
you.
And so April 30th is the next
April
Take Back
30th.
event.
Yes.